Okay, I think, great, we're live on Facebook. Wonderful. That wasn't so bad, actually.
People,
Hello, hello. Great to see everybody who's out there, and great to see you, Andre. I'm really happy to be with you here again.
we are still going.
Yeah, so I've got a few things that have come to mind and come to me in various channels this past week, but what about you? Have you been working on anything in particular, thinking about any ideas you're trying to share these days? What's been going on?
I literally spent the entire day today in Columbia, South Carolina, shooting a video about this very topic. My thoughts on Black Lives Matter movement versus Black equality, what white people should and shouldn't say,
Mm.
historical context, the stuff we've been talking about. I went and spent 6 hours shooting video, answering all the questions, so that way we can make that public for people for free.
Oh, cool. Wow, that's great. Who's putting that together?
I am. I hired a video team and they came in. We did a storyboard. We mapped it all out and we shot it. We got it done
Oh,
in
that's
six
great.
hours. It should be ready in about 2 to 3 weeks.
Wow, awesome. Yeah, well, we'll definitely share that through our channels here when that comes out.
So what you been working on?
Oh boy, yeah, it's been a big week. Lots of things related to some racial justice things. We actually got our behavior matching tool set up. So let me show that really quick because I'll share it along with this video. Um, and this is something this is a tool that we have from the behavior design lab at Stanford where we try to help people get matched with specific behaviors. So last week we talked about different behaviors that would that people could take: donating, joining organizations, all that sort of stuff. um, so I'm just going to give a quick preview. I'll send it to the list and everything, but here you go ahead and you match yourself on different behaviors of how effective you think it would be, and you do that for each one. And then you go through the list of ones that you thought were effective, and you rate them on how likely you are to get yourself to do them. And then it'll follow up with you, send them to you by email along with some other resources and things like that. So that's one thing I've been working on this past week.
Look, I gotta try it. You gotta send it to me. I'll test it out.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely would appreciate your feedback if you, see anything. I've run it by a few people so far, but it's still pretty early, and not completely perfect yet, I'm sure. So I'll let you know. But yeah, so that topic you're talking about, I guess like how white people talk about race. That was one of the ones that we sort of brainstormed a long time ago, and I was kind of curious about getting more into that one today. Kind of
Okay?
what it's like for you to be on the receiving end of people wanting to talk about race, and what should we talked about, like what people should avoid, how to be less offensive. What makes these conversations hard. I'd love to hear you talk about that a little bit.
I mean, my view is a lot of white folks have been like, we don't want to inundate our only a few black friends with these questions,
Yeah.
overwhelm them, and strain their relationship. And I've been saying to all my white friends, and I said today in the video shoot, we've been waiting for 400 years for this conversation. Please have it. Don't let your inability to get past yourself and you convincing yourself that we're not ready, so don't have the conversation. Black people in this country have been waiting 400 years for the conversation of race and reconciliation and repair to happen. So trust and believe we are ready, willing, and been more than able to have this conversation, and not from the standpoint of blaming, attacking, or shunning people. It's let's really get it done. I was thinking today, we have an opportunity to lift the burden that this country's been carrying for 400 years. We're not trying to undo history. We're trying to make a better future. And there's a distinct difference. So for me, talking to as many white people as possible who want to have the conversation, anybody who's called me for a Zoom, I've agreed, I've made time. Anybody who's called me for a call, I've made time because I'm not too busy to have this conversation. This is a conversation Black folks have been wanting to have and wanted to see happen since we got off the boat,
Mm.
since we went through Reconstruction, since we went through Jim Crow. since we went through the civil rights era, since we went through the war on drugs, since we went through mass incarceration, since we went through the war on black people, we've been waiting to have this conversation with white folks who really want to have it. And the thing is, the folks who've been disconnected are the really people we want to talk to. The liberals, the tree huggers, that we love everybody, we love them too. We've been needing to have this conversation across a broad spectrum, not just for the narrow group of supporters. We need the people who aren't supporters, who haven't been clued in, to be part of the conversation. Then it'll move. If we have a group of people who all think alike, we're going to come up with the same idea. When we infuse the white people who didn't believe this was an issue, the white people who thought there was other things happening and there might have been a hoax or there was something else to it. Now that they're at the table, it moves forward. It makes, as he's saying, politics. It's now bipartisan. Everybody's on board. And for those who are, great. And I still talk to people who don't believe in equality and don't believe there's a problem. I just simply ask you, if you don't think there's a problem, I'm fine with that. But don't get in the way of the people who want to have the discussion. I don't like particular baseball teams. I'm not a Yankee fan, but I'm not going to stand in front of the Yankee Stadium and pick it. I'm just going to go to a Red Sox game and call it a day. So you don't have to show up and pick at us. Just if you don't believe in the Red Sox, you don't like the Patriots, you don't like the Celtics or the Bruins, don't go to a Bruins game. So if you don't like this conversation, you have the right to opt out. We just ask that you don't interfere and stop other people.
Yeah. And that's something that I've been, through the things I've been doing here, trying to help make happen too, is to bring those people in who are maybe more on the periphery, who are, kind of on that edge of action where they haven't really done much before and are kind of curious, interested, open-minded, want to learn more, want to understand the issues. And that's what I'm hoping our conversations can help reach some of those people. And then also the sort of resources and materials and articles, there's so much coming out these days online where people can really educate themselves. There's not really any excuse, not that there ever has been, but now less than ever is a lack of available information and excuse to not be educated on these issues.
You know what's going to happen? White people who have the entire educational system working for them are now studying Black issues. I give you 8 months to a year, and the average white person will know more about the struggle in detail than Black people. Black people are just living it. If you live in an urban setting or in a city or a rural area, you're just living it. There's no Black person in Compton studying the civil rights movement. I'm not saying nobody, but in general, kids in Chicago who are on the street are not home reading the storyline of civil rights era. They're not really studying the transatlantic slave trade. They're not studying it because they're living the parts of it. Whereas now, as a white person, they're going to go study all of the books, all of the films, all of the history. And I guarantee you, about a year to 18 months, white folks will have surpassed Black folks in the area of knowledge of the movement that we're actually in. And like in so many other areas, music, business, sports, even hip hop, white folks come in and they take it over. And this will be the first time, hopefully, that when you take over something, you do the right thing with it. You took the blues, you made it rock and roll, and you kept it. You took hip hop, you turned it around to a whole nother space. You took your Negro leagues and you crushed them. I'm not mad about none of that. Get this one right. This one right.
Learn, by all means, learn and educate, but use that to funnel that energy back towards actual liberation and equality. For
you understand, 18 months from now, like when you start studying, you're a Stanford professor. This is what you do. You're an academic. So when you're going to know more than me in about 3 weeks. I live the movement, but I am the movement. But when you start studying the empirical data that's out there, you will be technically more savvy and insightful on the details than I will be. And that's what's going to happen. So we need to have the conversation. What does it look like when white people know more about the struggle and the movement than Black people? Because that's going to come to pass. Because white people are studying and reading like never before. This particular issue.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, like you said, hopefully that ends up being a force for good and empowerment for everybody. And yeah, I mean, the more white people are informed about these things, not ever having lived the experience of being Black in America, but what we can do is understand the historical forces and decisions that have shaped the experience that people have right now.
Right.
Yeah.
You
and
don't
and
have
ye,
lived experience to actually take over a movement and run it. So BET, Black Entertainment Television, is run by white people.
hmm,
Sean John, a Black clothing line, is run by white people.
hmm,
FUBU, For Us, By Us, which was Black folks, is now owned by white folks. We put on the list. Hip hop, which was born in the streets of New York City, young Black kids rapping, is now owned by white people. So this is the, I'm not struggling to deal with it. This is going to be no different than anything else. The
yeah,
monetization of Black folks is owned by white people all day.
yeah,
So what's going to happen, I'll say it, and I say it out loud, that white folks will master this subject like they have so many others. And they will become more knowledgeable, and they already have the power and the control. We're just hoping in this instance that you do it the right way.
hmm yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully, between our conversations, we can help guide people in the right way so that they are using it in the right way.
Correct.
And so, one thing I wanted to circle back to, I know you have been putting forth really heroic efforts to have these conversations, especially with white people, and to be very, patient and willing to show up and have these talks, and that's amazing. And at the same time, I wanted to ask and talk more about, reaching out to your Black friends, the other people in your life. In some circles of, sort of white activist circles, the emphasis is very much on trying to do your own education first. You can learn from a lot of Black people who have already written the basic material before you start sort of burdening, your Black friends and expecting them to do the job of educating you on something that you are perfectly capable of doing on your own. So I was wondering about that, sort of how to walk the line between, wanting to stay authentically connected to the real experience of Black people in your life, but at the same time not, bringing, making race always the topic of the conversation that you have with them. If they're sort of, fed up with it and they just want to relax and chill, why put that onto them, is sort of
If
the
they want
argument
to
you're hearing.
relax, chill, and get away from this conversation, their ancestors should roll over in their grave. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers should roll over in their grave. There should be no Black person in this country unwilling to have this conversation and to educate if it's going to better the people who are suffering and being oppressed. There should not be one Black person in this country who's unwilling to have as many conversations as necessary to ensure that the next generation and the babies that are coming behind us have a clear path to success. If you are so busy and so burdened and so tired of having this conversation that is subject to keep your son or your grandson alive, then you've been misguided and miseducated. We are responsible, we are obligated, and we should be on deck, because this is the time, this is the opportunity to change the entire narrative in our favor, in the sense of we will no longer be oppressed, we will no longer be suppressed, we will no longer be ostracized, we will just be included in the sense that we can live our lives and be prosperous, and whatever that means for each individual. So any Black friend of mine who tells me I'm tired of talking to white folks, then you must not have been in chains. You must have forgot what it was like to be in chains and whipped. You must have forgot what it was like to be less than a 3/5 of a man. So no, I'm not accepting that in this instance. I'm not pointing anybody out. But if you said to me, oh, I know somebody and they don't want to have this conversation, I don't care how informed you are, how intelligent you are, how read you are. You can speak to the plight of Black people. And if you feel as though it's not your place, then maybe you shouldn't deem yourself Black. I don't know. But this, for me, the way I see it, and I don't say anybody's right or wrong. Morgan Freeman said there's no racism in America. Fine, that's Morgan Freeman's world. I don't take that from him. I don't argue it. I love all his movies. I love to go to dinner with Morgan. And that wouldn't even be a topic for me. He's entitled to his opinion, but he should still be obligated to have the discussion with white people, even from his vantage point. Have the discussion. It doesn't matter what side you're on.
Mhm.
People are looking for information. You know, I help people for a living. So I'm just prone to help people. And I wish and hope that onto everybody that we could be helping. We should do for others what they want, what we want them to do for us. And we want them to we want to be educated. We want to educate our kids in better schools, and we need to educate white folks who control the schools. We want to not be shot in the street. We need to educate the people who pick the police chiefs. We want to not have policies that separate us from our families based on welfare and government assistance. Then we need to educate the politicians who make the laws, who dictate where we can and can't go. We are responsible collectively to bring this information, in my opinion. I'm not going to ostracize anybody for not, but I say and I stand on, in my opinion, this is our time. We've been waiting 400 years, and every Black person in this country should be open and willing to have the conversation to make it better.
Mm. Yeah, and I respect that, and that's that's what I'm here to share is what you think. And at the same time, on the for sort of the white people watching this, I also want to say that that doesn't mean that you're not responsible for doing your work too. Like I think people should look around. There's so much available right now to get up to speed, to be less offensive when you talk about these things, to learn a little bit about what's going on. I think there's obviously I think more responsibility for racial inequality in America falls to white people. It's not that Black people haven't been doing their job or haven't been doing their educating, but it's white people who have made these decisions and are that have brought the current situation to bear. So at the same time, I would also want to say, to sort of the white people watching who want to have these conversations, there's a lot you can do to on your side to take responsibility and to learn up.
Let me give white people the cheat sheet the easy way. For those who weren't Stanford professors, there's two documentaries. One's called The 13th. It's based on the 13th Amendment. The other one is called When They See Us.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on 5 kids persecuted and tried for crimes they didn't commit in New York City and had their lives ruined. If you want the cheat sheet on this whole process, watch When They See Us, and you also watch 13th. And then that'll be a facts track lesson to get you into any conversation you want. And if you want additional movies or resources beyond that, but if you want to listen, in 4 hours, you can knock the whole thing out. Family time, let's watch this movie. I don't need you watching Roots. It's not going to help. Roots is outdated in this sense, in this conversation. What you need to watch is 13th and When They See Us, and that'll get all white people, at least in a ballpark of having a conversation.
Yeah, I think both of those are excellent, really good starting places. And so what about when white people want to start having these conversations? We've talked about ways to be less offensive when you sort of are coming into this space. You don't know that much. You're trying, but you're not really that skilled yet. I don't know, what's worked well or less well in your experience?
Please, the one thing, please, 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 I have one request for white people who want to have this conversation or they find themselves in a group conversation about race. Stop telling us about your one Black encounter. I no longer want to hear about your one Black friend, your one Black encounter, or the one person that you met at the mall and you did whatever you did. Save that. I mean, it might be true. I'm sure it's true. It's a reflection of how you feel inside, of being uneasy and feeling like, oh my God, I need to let these people know that I care beyond what they might think I am. I don't want to be confused with a racist. So I'm going to tell you about my one Black story. If you don't want to be confused with a racist, and you don't want to be confused with somebody who's insensitive and doesn't care, I would much rather you tell me that as a white person, I don't know a lot about justice, but I'm for equal justice. I'm not exactly sure of the historical context of the inequality, but I can see they exist, and I'm standing against inequality. And I'm standing for equality for Black people. I'd much rather you tell me that than a lady you got a house for, or you bought a job for, whatever you did for. Tell me you stand for inequality, you stand against inequality, you stand for equality, and that you stand for better, you stand and support Black causes, Black education, a better criminal justice system. Those things are relevant and they matter to me now. The story about you and your one Black friend or your one Black encounter does not matter to me. It won't matter to people on your Zoom or your phone call. That 20-minute story that you have to ramble on because you're nervous, just say, you know something? I didn't know all the stuff. I'm for equality for Black people. I didn't know everything that was happening. I'm for criminal rights reform for Black people. That's great. That's what I want to hear. And that moves the conversation forward. Your 20-minute ramble is going to make people want to hang up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that's been helpful for me that I've picked up is trying to be clear about what your intentions are when you are saying something, when you're trying to share something in a group. And I think that intention often comes up as wanting to kind of protect your ego or not be seen as racist or to try to prove that, you're somehow, that this doesn't apply to you or something like that, rather than what you're talking about, the intention of wanting to actually make solutions and actually stand
Right.
up for the broader cause, where it's not about you as the sort of white person who's not racist, but you're there to try to support the cause.
We're not here to question where you've been. We're here to question and discuss where we're going. So if we're only discussing about where we're going, your one Black friend is in the past. So I don't want to have the story about your one Black friend or your one Black encounter.
Mm-hmm.
True or not. I don't care how great the story is in your mind. I want to talk about going forward. Because if we're going to start talking about going backwards, then it's going to be about where have you been, why have you checked in, what have you done beyond this one friend, and it's going to get really dicey, and it's going to get really technical and really tight. We're not here for that. I'm not here for that. So my philosophy is let's talk about going forward. And going forward, unless you help somebody today, if your one Black friend story is current, not post, if it's like you did it today, then hey, and even still, I want to hear for equality, against inequality, for education, for criminal justice reform. Those are the things that matter. Don't make it about you, make it about the movement.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. So we have a bit more time. I was curious, I realized maybe I shouldn't have scheduled this quite so late on your Friday over there on the East Coast, because it's technically a holiday. Tomorrow's 4th of July, and I was curious if you had
Fourth
any
of July.
commentary on that. Like, what does that mean to you?
The 4th of July, now you have to go back historically. When the 4th of July was first set up in 1776, we weren't free. So the 4th of July was not a holiday set up for Black people. There was a lot of things, but even still, the initial holiday, we weren't included. And I accept that because history speaks for itself. I celebrate the 4th of July because I accept myself as an American. They say, well, Andre, how can you celebrate the 4th of July when the holiday was set up? It wasn't for you, it was for white Americans. The same way I celebrate anything else. I vote, that wasn't set up for me. I'm deemed a human, that wasn't set up for me. I could buy houses in different parts of the country, that wasn't set up for me. You know something, I don't walk around with chains on. But when we came here, that was a role for me. Things change, good and bad, for and against. So I call myself an American, so I celebrate on July 4th, Independence Day for the country. I will also celebrate Juneteenth, which is a day for Blacks. And I'm going to celebrate a bunch of other holidays. I do Kwanzaa. You might not do Kwanzaa. You might do something else. Some people do Ramadan. We celebrate holidays that fit us. And if you're an American and you want to be in this country and you like being in this country, there's no reason you shouldn't celebrate. Are there issues attached to America and us? Yes. We've had the opportunity to do a lot of things. And I don't see anything wrong with celebrating the country we call home. Now, if you don't want to call this place your home, there's a big globe. You know what I'm saying? I'm not asking anybody to leave, but don't stay here and say, I hate this place. Because when I was in prison, I would never celebrate a prison holiday, ever. I will never celebrate a prison holiday. They say this is Prisoner's Day, hell with that. I will never celebrate a prisoner's holiday. But holiday for a country that I say I belong to, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, anything else you want to share for today?
No, I mean, I'm not in a rush, brother. I'm with you. I'm saying, I mean, it is holiday,
Yeah.
but that's not to tomorrow. So what else did you have for the top?
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking about was didn't want to keep you any longer, but I'm happy to jump into more. One of the things is thinking about actions for the sort of moderate crew who are just getting into this conversation, sort of putting their toes in, sort of the appropriate actions for that group and what will help them sort of get traction and feel, from the behavior design perspective, which I study, you want to help people feel successful, especially initially. The first time you try a behavior, the first time you show up to a protest or something, really how that experience goes shapes a lot about whether you're likely to engage more or to continue that experience. So I was thinking about behaviors for that group of people versus behaviors for people on the sort of more radical vanguard who are really, who have been in this for a long time and are, really pushing at the edges of the movement.
For people who are just coming on board or just becoming aware of what's going on, I want to tell you, Andre Norman has not gone to one protest in person. I have no plans or no scheduled dates to show up to any protest for two reasons. One, I'm not trying to get COVID. And B, that's not how I protest. That's not my protest model. I understand the methodology of standing out in unison, holding signs and chanting the whole nine. That's not my methodology. I encourage it. I support it. Go get them. I go into the prison system every day and I educate men and women behind the walls on transformation. I go into companies every day and I help CEOs, white CEOs and black CEOs, find better ways to use their social giving money to impact communities. I do calls like this with you, my friend, and try to educate and help people as best I can. So this is my meeting. Like I said, Morgan Freeman has his stance. This is my stance. Somebody's going to say, how can Andre be for the blacks, but he won't march? I'm not a marcher, and I'm not trying to apologize for that. So wherever you get in and wherever you fit in, do that. So if you're a marcher, go march. If you're a writer, blog. If you're a commentator, do commentary. Whatever your thing is that you feel comfortable, the quest is not that you join the masses. The quest is you join the movement. And the movement is not just in one place. And I told my friend last week, he owns a white company. I said, as a white company owner, you should never come online and say, I support Black Lives Matter. You should come online and say, I support Black equality. Because the differential is Black Lives Matter is a vast thing that has a lot of moving components that everybody doesn't agree with. Black equality is clear, it's safe, and it's simple, and it's what we really want. Black Lives Matter is the energy in the movement. If we focus all our time and attention on the energy in the movement and we don't focus on Black equality, there'll never be a law, there'll never be a policy, there'll never be a change. So we need Black equality, which is the new laws and policies, as much, if not more, than Black Lives Matter, which is the movement and the energy and the response to oppression. So I say to people coming in, don't feel compelled to be in one lane. Get in your lane because you will stay in it longer and you'll be more effective at it.
Yeah, I've found that to be the case for myself, even over the past few weeks of trying to find where in this movement I fit and what I'm good at and, how I can advance the cause the best versus, doing things that don't feel that I'm very good at or don't really enjoy. You can sort of force yourself to do that a little bit, but it's not natural and I don't think it's sustainable.
What did Ben Hardy say? Willpower doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's that group and then there's sort of the radical vanguard of the movement, who are really pushing at the, to people who are very experienced in that. And, maybe that's not exactly our audience. Maybe it is, but I don't know if you had any commentary on that side of the spectrum.
The people who are out chanting, looting, running flags and holding signs.
I mean, maybe not looting, but, just people who have, really dug into these causes for a long time.
I mean, yeah. I don't loot. I don't co-sign looting, but I know why people are looting. I mean, some people are just thieves, and some people, that's their way of expression. If we go back to when we had the education crisis in the 60s and 70s in America, Black kids going to white schools. White people protested, and they did not hold signs. They went up and beat up people. There was no peaceful protest when Black kids were trying to go to white schools. I was one of the kids on the buses. They threw rocks and names at us. They called us niggers and porch monkeys because we were trying to go to school. Yeah. When Black people want to sit at a counter and eat lunch at Woolworth, white people protested. I don't remember seeing signs. I remember people being drugged from the counter and beat and stomped and spit on. So all of a sudden, protesting is bad. Well, when they protested, Black folks doing whatever they were doing, oh, trying to eat lunch, trying to be educated, all of their protests turned violent. All of their protests turned violent. And they beat people. They didn't burn down Target. They didn't burn down Woolworth. They beat the people. And it was completely acceptable by the masses. I can't think of one person tried and convicted for attacking a Black person in protest in the 50s or 60s or 70s. It was completely acceptable behavior. Now, the protest is on the other side, and we have all these rules and regulations on protests. When we first came to this country, how did we get out from British rule? No taxation without representation. We weren't supposed to remember that line from college, from school. No taxation without representation. The American people were being oppressed by the British to the point where they said, we have enough. We are paying all this money to you and we are not getting services. We are no longer going to pay you. Matter of fact, we're going to fight and kill you. God forbid we take their own approach to them that they use with the British. That would be unacceptable. Oh my God, they're radicals. Were they radicals when they fought the British? So why are we radicals in 2020? So we have to look at history and say, what's good for one side, why is it not good for the other side? Now, I don't condone or suggest that we attack folks and try to kill them all, because I got a lot of white friends, a lot of white people I consider family. So it's not as simple as white and Black in that space. But history has shown how white people protest. History has shown how white people speak up. Now, when they see other people in the same vein, but not to the same extent, they don't like the way it looks.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's pretty clear. It's a racial issue, right? It's because it's Black people doing it. It's not white people doing it. Yeah, and that's why the protests are necessary, because that sentiment still exists, and it's still it's still holding people back.
A white militia in Washington State with AR-15s and AK-47s are fine. The Black Panthers, threat to the nation.
Yeah.
I'm okay as a white person looking at another white person holding a gun. I'm not okay with Black people holding guns.
Yeah, it's that double standard, and you can see it. You can see the hypocrisy in all those examples that you just mentioned. And just general criticism of the protest movement. If, for certain people in the country, there's no form of protest that they're really actually okay with, peaceful, not peaceful. They don't want to, they just don't want to acknowledge the cause itself or the underlying problem. They just kind of want to pretend it's not there. So anytime it's forced in their face, they, reject the methods of doing that.
I say to white folks who don't like the movement, the cause, the protest, the looting, the riots, I can agree with all of it for the sake of, you give me a better solution to get equality. You give us a better solution, and I'll take it to the streets and I'll make sure they know what it is. But if you can't provide a better solution for equality for Black people in this country, then don't tell them what not to do, tell them what to do. As long as you tell them what not to do, that Nancy Reagan just say no is great, but say yes to what? I'm looking for the just say yes to what? And you give me to say yes, and I promise you, I'll take it to every block on every corner in America, and I'll make sure everybody holding a sign will know that march and know that code. But tell me what to say yes to.
Yeah. Well, Andre, I think that's a good spot.
That's it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, you've been so busy. I really admire what you've been up to, what you're doing, and I'm really grateful that you're sharing your time with us as usual.
Man, well, this is what we do. For us to make it better, I don't care how busy we are. We want the world to be better, but we're too busy to stop and sit down and have a half-hour conversation once a week. Yeah. If I can't give a half-hour conversation once a week, then what am I really doing? I mean, what is so busy in my day that I can't stop for 30 minutes to have a meaningful conversation that might enlighten somebody who needs this information? So we want them to do it, then we got to do it first.
That's a tremendous spirit, Andre. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. I'll see
you. All right.
Next week.
See ya.